see her. Nice to see some of you I haven't seen for years. Many years ago, I went back to MIT because I was going to write a thing, and I wanted to interview some students and professors. And I found out that my idol was dating one of the professors at MIT. And she invited me to stay at her place for a couple of days while I messed around with those geniuses. And I would say to them, I wrote this and I know it can't happen. And they would always say, not yet. And so I was talking about synthetic helium, and I said, I know it can't be done. And that's the answer I got all the time, was not yet. So one of the PhD students, I said, well, how long do you think it's going to be until they figure that out? He says, I think that the person who figures it out is probably now in the 4th grade. So it's like the whole attitude of that place was never close your eyes, never put up a wall or a barrier that something can never happen, because keep yourself open to the possibility, even if today it's impossible. Now, as you can see by the bulletin, I have 2 special guests with me join me. And come on up now, please. Winnie and Barbara. We haven't quite figured out this seating arrangement, but you can do it however you want to do it. And
2 on the sides.
I want you to be over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is not ready for Broadway.
Which is the way we run this church, for those of you who are new. So Winnie and Morgan invited several of us to their house for dinner last year. And Barbara was there and Joan Carter. Now, some of you don't know Joan Carter. She used to be the associate pastor here, and she was here with me for 15 years. She now is living in Seattle. And so you know how those conversations around dinner go. There's no agenda, but it runs kind of from A to Z and back and forth. And if everybody is talkative, which we all are, it just goes on and on and on. And we're sorry to have to go home. And in the course of the conversation, something came up about silent retreats. And so I said, if you'll organize it, I will lead a silent retreat. And so everybody there said yes. Well, not everybody came. Joan got ill and couldn't make it. And it was on a weekday, so therefore Morgan couldn't make it. And there were 2 or 3 other people who were thinking about it but dropped out. So it was just the 3 of us. And we went to a Catholic monastery about 40 miles south of Carmel. And the road from Highway 1 up to the monastery is 2 miles. And so here you are in this magnificent place, looking at all Big Sur from one side to the other, and it's just spectacular. And we stayed in little rooms that I describe as Motel 6 Plus. And the plus isn't because there's a lot of fancy furniture, because there isn't, but there's a back door, and the back door leads to a patio. You go out there, there are 8-foot walls, and out in front of you is Big Sur. And everybody has one of those private patios. In addition to that, there are roads and there are trails, so hike. And all over the place, there are reminders, don't talk. This place is for quiet, this place is for silence. And so that's kind of the introduction of what happened. Now, I'm going to say a little bit about them, but then I'm going to ask them to talk about their professional life. Years ago, a Buddhist friend of mine, he always said to someone they met the first time, what do you do to finance your present reincarnation? I thought it was a wonderful way to talk. So Barbara has been involved in church for a long time, then went away because of her vocation, and now is back in a big way and very active in the church, serving as a deacon, and as you can see, is one of the pastors today. So why don't you tell us about your vocational life?
On my reincarnation?
Yeah.
So, I was with the church for about 10 years.
Louder?
I was with the church for about 10 years, and then I moved to the peninsula with a job I had working for a life sciences company that was involved in large-scale genomics research. I was not on the science side, I was the head of HR, but it was a very interesting career and something I enjoyed, and when I returned to the church, I realized I'd been gone for almost exactly 15 years. And it was wonderful to come back and see a lot of familiar faces and feel welcome back. And now that I'm back, I'm currently serving as a deacon, and my chosen volunteer vocation is the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine. It brings together education and science and animals, all of which are very important to me. And I serve on the Dean's Leadership Council. And Davis is a very exciting school, I think, for people who may have a stereotypical view of a vet school, that it's a place where you take your dogs to get vaccinated. But the mission of this school is really to do things to help animals, people, and the environment, that important interconnected network, to be healthy and thrive.
Good work. Winnie has been involved in the church for 20 years. Is currently a deacon and very, very active. And also the deacons, one of the things they do is the Lord's Supper, which they have set up today. So they've been very busy, and they're going to stay busy until the end of the service. So please tell us what you do for Fun and Games and financing your reincarnation.
I have an executive search firm for 30 plus years. Believe me if I told you I started when I was 16. No.
Let me get close to you so we can get in here.
I can share.
So my
I can share. How's that? As I was saying, I have an executive search firm, The Network Advantage. It's a boutique firm. We handle clients, small startups to Fortune 50 companies. My largest client was the Walt Disney Company, and clients like Marriott and HMS Host. Kept me very busy and kept me on the road a good bit. My passion is the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I am the North Bay Regional Wish Coordinator, which means we handle the wish children from San Francisco all the way to the Oregon border. We have about 64 volunteers in the North Bay, and a lot of you may know and remember and think about Make-A-Wish when you think about that kid. He was one of ours.
So the next time I'm looking for work, I'm going to give her a buzz. Probably did a good job with her. Thank you very much. Now, I said to them a couple of months ago, would you be willing to talk about the retreat if we ever get a chance? And so when Paul called me about doing it this morning, I called them and they said yes. And we met, and I know a little bit about what they're going to say, but none of the details, because we don't go into that. And Barbara has requested that Winnie begin. Now, I'll tell you one thing about Winnie. She is a super dedicated person when it comes to Make-A-Wish Foundation. When I was teaching at the drug place, I wanted to have a person who loved their work and was passionate. Because, the drug people knock themselves out and waste their life, and I wanted to give an example of how to do it in a different way. So Winnie came and gave 1 hour non-stop on Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I'll tell you, those guys left high as a kite, not on drugs, but on enthusiasm, excitement, and loving what you do. Winnie.
First of all, I want to thank you, George, for inviting us. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is it working? Thank you, George, for inviting me to share the unique experience that we had. And I also want to thank you for your incredible, thorough preparation that you provided us to allow us to go into this time of silence. And if it hadn't been for that, you're preparing us. I don't know if I would have been able to go through with it. because we had meetings, we had email exchanges, and I thought most of the time I felt pretty confident about going into a 48-hour silence. But then I would have a moment where the little voice inside my head would say, "What are you thinking? You can't go 48 hours without speaking. Just ask my husband. I mean, that's not normal." And then I would go back to something that George had given me in a type of affirmation, like, let's plan a vacation and leave all of our words at home. And that would get me through for quite a few days, maybe a week, 10 days, and then I would think, I can't not talk to my family or my loved ones in 48 hours. I mean, when I visit on the phone with my daughter and I know that she and Clay and Chella are all doing well, that's something that makes my world go round. I didn't know that I wanted not to have that. So I'm thinking, I can't do this. And then I would go back to my notes and George would have another affirmation for us, like, this retreat is a gift. And it's a gift I give myself that I am worthy of. And I would think, oh yeah, I got this. So this really it was very powerful. And I arrived in Big Sur feeling like I was ready, I was prepared. I had thought this through week after week after week. And yes, it may not be normal to not speak for 48 hours, but I felt really ready because of this wonderful preparation. So I arrived in Big Sur with my tools. I brought my angel meditation cards. I brought my book on silence. And I brought my book of Rumi poetry. Because we were allowed to read. We weren't allowed, well, there was no way. We couldn't even cheat. We had no internet and we had no cell service. So you couldn't cheat if you wanted to. So when I arrived at this amazing facility, I immediately felt this incredible sense of calm. You're looking at vistas that are just breathtaking. You're in a very sacred space. You don't see a lot of the monks initially, but you feel their presence. George led us into a silence with a beautiful, very special ritual that I'm going to be a little selfish and not share because it was so private and intimate and special and unique to the experience we were about to have. And after George led us into the silence, I walked into my little room, humble as it was, and I closed the door and I went, okay, there is nothing expected. There are no demands. This is the time where I will learn my silence. Even though the chatter here is going on, I will learn the silence in my soul. The first day when we arrived, this wonderful little patio that we have, I had a resident hummingbird. And I thought the first day, how wonderful, I've got this hummingbird. And I don't know how many hours I was into the silence, but I remember then thinking, to be so small, it's so noisy. Because it seemed that my hearing was magnified, that my vision had improved. We hiked one day around, was it the loop or the trail? What did they call it? The trail. So the trail is on the property at the Hermitage. And when George had prepared us, if you're going to hike the trail, you need to put your name and your room number on a 3x5 card and hand it to a monk at the front desk before you go onto the trail, so that they know where you are and they can account for you. So we did that. We gave the monk the card. He knew we were walking the trail. And as I'm walking, I'm seeing this incredible stone formation. And I'm thinking, that's massive. And it's beautiful. I don't know if it was because I had not talked for so many hours that this was magnified, but it made an impression in my mind that I was so aware of the beauty around me. I was sitting outside one day, and again, I was alone, looking at the ocean, in my silence, and there was a golf cart that came into the circle. Someone was putting food in the kitchen, and I remember thinking, the crunch of the golf cart tire is making music on the gravel as it travels through the circle. I don't know that I would have been so aware. I don't know that I would have been so in tune with the visual and my surroundings had I not been in this place of silence. It seemed magnified. It seemed just for me. As I went through my silence, we were allowed to read, and I did get through my books, but I also listened to the chatter in my head, and you'll understand that I am no Mary Oliver, but a poem came into my head, which I wrote down, and I may have to refer to it. It's in that silence book. And this is what I wrote as I sat in silence. I walked, I wrote, I read. I heard the chatter in my head. I searched the silence in my soul. It came to me because that's where I was. That's what I was experiencing. When George led us out of the silence at the end of our time, I came out of it feeling empowered. I came out of it feeling powerful. I came out of it with a sense of calm and peace and joy that resides in me to this day. And now, as I go through my noisy life and the chatter continues, if things get a little stressful or if things get too noisy, I am able to mentally picture myself in Big Sur, seeing the ocean, feeling the feeling that I had as I sat in my silence. And it brings me a calm that's hard to describe. It brings me to a place of peace that is hard to describe. And it almost borders on a euphoric sense of understanding that is a little hard to describe in a way because it's so in here. So thank you. Thank you, George.
Passing the baton.
And
Well, I would like to start by also thanking you, George, for making this possible. I think Winnie and I both had mixed feelings about it initially, and it was your willingness to make it happen that I think gave us both the courage to go on this adventure. And in reflecting on it, as I did to make some comments today, I realized I've had an interest about doing things to connect with myself at a deeper level for as long as I can remember. And I consider myself a person who cares deeply, but I've also had a lot of pragmatic, achievement-oriented conditioning. So this pursuit is not something that has naturally come easily to me. So when the possibility came up to go on this retreat, I thought this would be a way to pursue it to a different level. Something different than the books I've read or the workshops I've attended. And so it gave me the courage to say, I think I'll give it a try. And when I think back on how I went into it, I think I had some mixed feelings. I was curious. I've always been interested in learning new things, and I thought, well, this will be something new and different, and I wonder what it will be like. I had a feeling of anticipation. I was going to be experiencing something in a new dimension, and I wondered if maybe there would be some miraculous things that would happen. You know, you hear about people who go on these kind of retreats and it takes them to special places and things, and I thought, maybe that'll be me. But I also had a feeling of, I was somewhat nervous. As Winnie said, I thought, can I keep quiet for 2 days? Really? No cell phone? No Wi-Fi? Is this something just logistically that I can do? And then I thought, I feel vulnerability about this. I'm doing something that's taking me outside my comfort zone. And on some level, I know it's a good thing to do, and another level, it makes me feel somewhat exposed, if only to myself. And then I think I also had a feeling about, am I going to come up empty on this? Am I going to go into the kind of experience that people talk about being profound and transformative and feel like I somehow just didn't do it right? So those were the kind of feelings I had going into it. And I think getting to the location we selected, which is one of George's favorite places, perhaps your favorite place. When we did the research, this was the one that came up at the top of the list, so we're really very glad that we were able to go there. But getting to that place, I was just joyous about the beauty. You know, here we are 2 miles up on the side of a mountain, looking out over Big Sur. It's a hermitage, which means that there are individual buildings that the monks stay in that were scattered going down the hillside. And as Winnie said, you didn't see the monks at first very much, but you just had this feeling that it was really a sacred place. And so there was a feeling of joy about that. I was tremendously appreciative about the safe and trusted environment I felt I was in, being there with Winnie and with George. And I too am not going to speak particulars about the ritual that we went through going into the silence, but it was really very special and set the stage for this in a way that was very meaningful to me. I also, in the spirit of full disclosure, was glad that I had a sense of humor, because I had a feeling that there might be a few bumps going through this, that it was not going to be just a smooth continuum, but it was an important thing to think about when I went into it. So during the 48 hours themselves, I didn't have any difficulty not talking. I found it was really very peaceful to be quiet. And even though there was some chatter going on in my head, and George referred to it as a retreat without speaking out loud, because you can't stop all of the voices that are going on inside, but I did find that some of the chatter went down over time as I was there, and that it was just nice to, as you pass people going into the kitchen they have, how people acknowledge each other or don't. It's because it's a sacred space and people can handle it whatever way they want. But there was something nice about just even greeting the people who wanted to with eye contact without necessarily saying anything. It was very special. I love the sense of awareness I had about the surroundings, which I think Winnie spoke to quite eloquently. It's amazing what happens when you're just quiet and there's silence around you. The things you hear, the things you see. I think you sent that hummingbird over to me after it was making too much noise for you. And I was very disturbed later after the peacefulness of watching the hummingbirds to go to George and Linda's and finding out from Linda that they actually fight a lot. So I think they may have been on a silent retreat too, because they were really very well behaved. So at the same time, I was experiencing things I realized I was also waiting for something magical to happen. Was I going to suddenly be able to meditate? Was I going to have a mystical experience? And most important to me, given my love of animals, where was my animal totem? You know, it just wasn't showing up. Although I do have to say that I thought it was significant for me, given my love of animals and particularly dogs, that one day when I was sitting out on the patio, a dog walked by. And we knew that dogs weren't allowed on the property, so I thought on some level this had to be significant. Anyway, as I moved into this, I realized there was a point I got to where I was starting to feel restless. And I realized that it was, I was being judgmental about how I was handling the process. You know, am I doing this right? And I was glad I was able to catch myself, because I think I was taking myself right down that road to coming up short. And so I realized what for me was a very significant revelation, which is, it's really about doing it in the way that works for me. And it may not being able to, you know, suddenly meditate for long periods of time or have a mystical experience, but just simply giving myself permission to do it the way that works for me made a big difference about my being able to immerse myself in the experience. And for me, it was doing some reading, poetry and some other things that fed my soul. It was doing some hiking. And I think we worked out a very good technique for not violating the silence, but letting each other know that we wanted to go on a hike, because we didn't want to go alone on some of these trails. So I would come out and Winnie would be sitting on a bench, and we'd just kind of nod and then remain in our silence and go on that together. So that was an interesting way to have some special bonding time, even though we weren't speaking. And the other thing that I did for me was the first time, and was very helpful, was doing some journaling. That's another one of those things that I haven't had a chance to do, and I think it helped me to observe myself going through the process and noting what the different stages were. And I think it was part of what got me to a point of saying, you're getting judgmental here, and you need to really kind of back off and think about what you can do to make this work and be a special experience for you, which it was, a very special experience. And when I think about what it means to me now, it is that pursuing inner work is definitely a continuing process and something that needs some concerted effort. It's not just going to happen by sitting around and waiting for it to happen. And for me, I realized that letting myself be vulnerable, which I did in this adventure, is part of what it takes to get to a different dimension, because without that it's really very hard to have that happen. And so I think the concrete way I can describe how it affected me is it affected my word for the year. So just to back up for a minute, a number of years ago my mother, based on something that she had read, came up with the idea that given the length of time that people stick with their New Year's resolutions, which is usually about partway into the first week of the new year, that a better approach was to pick a word that represented sort of an overarching goal you had for yourself for the year, and something you could kind of check in with, but not as much as a to-do list. And so the word that I picked for this year, that I know is a direct result of some of my experience on this retreat, is the word connection. And it's about really being connected to the things that are important to me. My family, my friends, the work that I do, and most importantly, myself. And myself at a different and deeper level than I have been before. And I think that has led me to now start being conscious of this as a goal and thinking about specific things I can do to support that. And I don't think I would have done that had I not had a chance to have that time with myself in that special place. So, thank you. Thank you. And to finish, Winnie and I left the retreat with some special friends that, for both of us, I think are wonderfully symbolic of the time we had, and we'd like to introduce them to you.
You brought a hummingbird.
I didn't know that.
No, but we brought the monks, which was sort of interesting. So we would like you to meet, this is Damien, and this is Benjamin, but Winnie's gotten to know him well enough that she calls him Ben. The rooms that we stayed in were all named after saints. So you were in St. Benedict, I was in St. Peter Gamian, and I'm not sure that you remember, but you were in St. Albertino. So as we were driving home, we stopped at Nepenthe, a shop in Big Sur, and discovered these wonderful symbols of our special time in your garden area. And it's interesting because we brought them home and we both individually found the perfect place for them, and for each of us it's in our kitchens, on the counter, among the plants. And what we both discovered is it's hard to go by them without rubbing their little heads. Yeah, so I think the symbolism of that has been important to both of us. I don't know, would you like to make a comment on that?
No, just to look at the face kind of reflects the feeling that there was just a certain joy, and you can see it in the face of this little guy.
Now, we want a time for you to say something or respond or ask a question or whatever. So feel free. Yes.
You said something very telling at the beginning, that you weren't sure whether you were deserving of this experience. It made me think about this, that I'm, you might guess, a very verbal person and feel a need to fill silence. And I find that whenever I am experiencing, I'm alone, and I'm experiencing something beautiful as you were looking out, all I can think about is, how am I going to describe it to somebody? It wasn't enough that I was there and enjoying it. It was only, I'm the vessel to transfer that experience to somebody else, because maybe I'm not deserving of it. Maybe it's not sufficient that I enjoy it, that I have to share it with others. But you're going to make me rethink that.
It is.